Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. I am so excited to have Jonathan De Collibus with me today, founder, investor, quant, co founder of Superior. He has built 16 companies from scratch, engineered enterprise systems that redefine efficiency, and authored Unlimited Influence, a best selling book on ethical persuasion. Jonathan's story proves that capitalism, when paired with servant leadership and system thinking, creates exponential value. Jonathan, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you.
Dude, all I got to do is listen to that audio every morning and I'll be pumped for the day, man. Thanks. That's a great introduction.
Yes, and for our listeners and watchers, he is coming to us live from Switzerland. So this is pretty exciting. So yeah, maybe we'll just kind of kick it off. I mean, you mentioned having dual citizenship with the U.S. and growing up here, but like you describe yourself as a California farm boy at heart. How did those early lessons in hard work and responsibility shape the way you lead and think about business today?
Well, those are some great times.
Yeah.
Getting dirty, building fences, getting cuts, killing snakes, all that. I think what it taught me is it's okay to get hurt. It's okay to get dirty. Just get back up, dust off, and keep on working. The other one, I think the other big thing is just get up early, work hard. Doesn't matter level of success or lack thereof. Just get that work in.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and as I said, I mean, you've built 16 companies across widely different sectors. What are some core principles that have been kind of a through line? We kind of going back to the California farm, but kind of from the barn into the boardroom. What are some kind of through line lessons
Barn to
for
the
you?
boardroom. Well, I
Yeah.
think that's going to be the next title of my next book. I love that. That's great. It's a good question. I think when you look at the first few companies that I founded, that I started, they were, I'd say, dramatic and amazing failures. So I think that was something that I don't want to I don't want to skip over that because I think there's way too much Hollywood-esque, sort of entrepreneurship that's been out here where you just sort of you strike it big and then you're just always winning. The first, I want to say the first three to four were incredibly net negative from a P&L perspective. And I think that was just, a lack of understanding of sales, a lack of understanding of marketing. And I think to the capitalist culture crew here, I think it's the idea that you can just put ideas out there, but you've also got to realize that you've got the other side of the equation, which is the market, right? So you've got your offers, you've got all of these things that you want to put out there, but ultimately, if you don't have the market's buy-in, then dust off and move on. I guess back to our barn to boardroom
Yeah.
conversation there. So I think that would be, I'd say that would be something that really defined me at the beginning part of my entrepreneurship career, because the level of I guess it knocks your ego a bit. It kind of wakes you up to, okay, well, it's not as easy as fill in the blank entrepreneurship book made it sound like. Follow these 7 steps and you're there.
Huh.
Um, but I think the other thing that it does is that it makes you resilient. And I think that is something that to this day you bring, and I'm sure that you can relate to this as well. That you have a level of poise, and it's hard to throw you off balance because you've already been through the months where you've had a negative profit carry over to the following month of 6 figures, and you're like, and then now
Uh-huh.
a small problem comes up, you go, okay, well, great, yeah, let's take it in stride, it's fine, we've survived. So I think for anybody who's at the beginning level, keep on pushing, keep on trying new things. As we say, I think the biggest lesson that I've learned has been make better offers to better people more often. I think that's been my
Mm.
my mantra. But I think there is that sense of evolution, that you have to constantly be evolving. You got to constantly go back to that drawing board and read the market, read the room, see what you're getting back, and improve based off of that. And then once you've got something that works, scale it to kingdom come.
Yeah. No, very good. Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about Superior. I mean, we talked a little bit before we started recording here just about systems thinking, and
Mm.
obviously that's really something that you're known for, kind of taking operational precision and turning, as you say, chaos into clarity. So maybe talk a little bit about that if you would.
Well, I think it's an interesting story. I think we got started. This is a company that my brother, also fellow farm boy as
Uh-huh.
myself, calloused hands. Although he is taller than me, better looking than me, but we'll keep that off the record for now. Um, but we started Superior with the really explicit goal of building mission critical software for large enterprise companies, and so there was just a good span of years and years that's all that we did. And we started realizing a weird pattern. It was a very interesting position that we found ourselves in, which is the shareholders who were bringing us in to build these systems would kind of get us to uh, these quiet private meetings, and they would say, look, we've got this operations issue. What do you think? How would you approach it? And I remember we'd be sitting there. I mean, our company's not a small company. We've got over 130 engineers on payroll. It's not, we're not small, but at the same
Right.
time, our clients in comparison are massive. And we'd be sitting there going, like, why would you want to talk to little old me? I mean, about that. That was sort of the idea. But we would just say, okay, great. Well, let's put it through the process that we know, which is the systems engineering thinking that we use to design complex software systems. And we would say, okay, well, what would happen if we would apply that same system to operations? And that was one of the things where it was very organic in how that grew. We didn't ever pursue that as a path, but today's become a really strong pillar. I think it's something that we're pretty well known for today, years later. But it was interesting because we would go in and we'd run these audits, and we would look at a system in almost the exact same way that we would analyze the way data is processed or the way that a function works, and we would identify these constraints in the larger system that were effectively choking the company's ability to drive the most value to the market. Was costing them the most money. Um, and we would just say, well, what if we just did this? And we would just offer up, again, some of these very common sense, probably, points of feedback. They would think about it, they would apply it, and then they'd come back to us and do more and more. And things sort of tended to evolve and evolve after that. I mean, we had clients who gave us shares at first, as a way of repayment, and well, thank you. We've got a surprise for you. There was one of our clients. I'll never forget it. He pulled us in. He goes, "Hey, I've got a little surprise for you guys." And what is it? And he gave. I mean, it wasn't a large percentage, but I mean, we weren't expecting it, and it was a beautiful gift, and we still hold shares to this day. And then we started saying, well, maybe there is something here. So we began to sort of pursue that a bit deeper with our existing client base that just turned into its own thing. So I think that's a bit of what we do, I guess, in a sense, is really, if I can take a quick sort of caveat on this, I think apex capitalism
Mm.
is it's the model that is able to produce the highest value to the marketplace at the lowest cost of acquisition and delivery. I think that is and I don't know if you disagree with that, or if you'd add anything or remove anything from that.
So maybe say a little bit more about what you mean by apex capitalism, or maybe that was your definition.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of the one of my favorite animals is the orca,
Huh.
in the because it is the true apex. I mean, unless if you're a human with a torpedo, you're not taking it down. They weigh 4 times as much as a great white shark. They're absolute geniuses when it comes to strategy and working together, communication, etc. And so when I think of apex, I think of the type of capitalism that will always dominate, that will always win, that will always you know, provide and protect, which are some very high values that I have. But I think that's what it means to me is, if you have a very highly competitive environment, which is, that is what a free market provides.
Hmm.
I think that specific formula for me is the equation that really guarantees that you're going to win.
Yes. How about your example? I mean, this 13-hour to 4-minute transformation. I mean, that's pretty staggering. What was the process behind spotting inefficiency at that level? And then how did you communicate to the team and get them to embrace that kind of change instead of resisting it?
That's a great question. So I think when we look at any sort of strong feedback that you would provide. I mean, listen, when we were talking with that client, we were speaking to them at the C-suite level. So I think the conversations are, there tend to be a bit more open and a bit more great, sort of high agency, high sovereignty. You can just do things, whatever. So that came out after we had, analyzed their entire delivery process, and we had identified that they had one area in their delivery that was costing them a fortune. It was also connected to their reputation quite a bit as well, because they had a lot of rework that would come back from their own clients. They had reputational issues, revenue issues. There's a lot of R's, a lot of relationship problems that were, all stemmed back to this one issue. And we looked at it and we said, well, look, it seems like this is, fortunately or unfortunately, this is a very creatively yet repetitive, I guess, what's the best way of saying this? Repetitively creative. Is that the best way of saying that?
Sure.
So there is some creativity that would go into it, but there was just a very heavy process. So what we did is we spent about a week with their ops team in that specific department, and we just shadowed them, and we just said, just tell me everything that you do. I want to see. Just show me everything. And we went through it, and we started identifying all these common denominators and all these steps that they were doing. We also found that there were a lot of things that were not common denominators. There were a lot of things that they were doing that were not being done uniformly, to where, we call it anarchy, right? So you've got sort of little anarchy, bits, a little bit of Mad Max happening.
Sure.
In the ops teams, where, somebody's doing it this way, somebody's doing it that way. And then, this company gets scaled really, really, really fast, which is a big part of that. So the founders had been sort of the original delivery team. They built a few SOPs, and then they just kind of grew this thing. And then, flash forward 6-7 years later, they just had a complete disaster in their ops, and it was hurting their reputation massively and hurting their revenue pretty bad as well. So we took this creative process, and we were able to get the bits and pieces that absolutely required human input. And that's important, because I think not everything needs to be optimized. I think that's a bit of a controversial position that we take. And as a bit of a caveat on that, one of the things I heard recently, actually, from Rory Sutherland. Have you heard of this guy, Rory Sutherland? He's a British,
Yes.
great thinker, very interesting guy. He was talking about a story of when he would go to this hotel in San Francisco. Every time that he'd go there, they'd have this guy at the door who'd be greeting you, and, oh, hey, how you doing, Kip? And there's this personal, point. And then, strangely enough, they had optimized it to where when you'd get there, you just flash your app or whatever, and then the doors would open, and you'd just self-check into your room. And he never ended up going back to that hotel ever again, but he had gone there for years and years. And so I think that, when people think about systems optimization, there is a bit of a fallacy to think that you need to optimize every single piece. I don't think that that's the case. So what we did is, effectively, kind of going back to this client, we took all of the elements that required creativity, and we put them into a small little box, and we took everything else and we effectively coded the rest. And by the way, as a side note, I guess another controversial point that I have, I'm not super heavy on the whole AI thing.
Uh-huh.
I'm just not. I think we've all sort of had it up to here with the seamless operational. Well, just all the words that not
Right.
only this but also that. And I know that there's ways to sort of move that needle and kind of do that, but I think the best sort of approach is to actually go in and build an algorithm. Because an algorithm can actually be controlled. You can fine tune things. And yeah, sure, you might have AI every now and then, but this is not. I'm not an advocate for AI, just as a general. So, long story short, we and this is a very long answer to a very brief question you asked me here, but effectively, what we did was we took a process that it was an entire cycle in the way that we measure everything, because we believe in this concept we call scientific accountability, which is we believe that, and by the way, we take our own medicine extremely heavily. I mean, we're almost drunk on our own medicine with the level of scientific accountability that we inject into our own teams. But scientific accountability for us, it comes down to really defining and aligning incentives, but also defining and aligning units of value. So what we did is we took this abstract unit of value and we defined it, and we said, well, great, this is taking 13 hours. When I had first talked to the C-level, they had told me, well, that, I don't know, probably takes about an hour and a half for everything. So they were off by 10 plus X, right?
Yes.
But once you measure it, you can manage it. I forget who says that. Is that Covey?
I think so. Yes.
Is that Covey? That's Covey, right? And so the idea basically is we took that, we eliminated all of the points that could be automated with code, and we codified everything A to Z with little injections of where people could go in and inject their creativity. And yeah, I mean, you're right. It was a 13-hour process down to 4 minutes, 22 seconds.
That's unbelievable.
And so here's the interesting thing, is that to speak to your part of your question there, which is how do you communicate that to the people in ops? Because I think there is a very real fear that people have in ops, which is, the bad guys are going to come in and replace us with technology.
Sure. Right.
And so the way that I see it is this is more about repurposing people instead of removing or replacing them. So the idea for us comes down to what can this person do that only this person can do? And it comes down to, and frankly, there are huge amounts of OpEx that get cut, I think, and that's natural. It's a natural part of business. I think when you get to a certain point, some of your B players and C players, they just won't make it. And frankly, maybe they need to go somewhere else where they can be an A player, right? I mean, that's not a bad thing. I think back to our capitalist free market point, I mean, the business in that relationship is the market. So, improve yourself and don't worry about it, But effectively though we were able to take a lot of that, to basically repurposing some of their A players and saying, well, great, instead of just spending all of your time doing all of this anarchist, chaotic work, why don't we get you, and why don't we, what is it that you feel that you're the strongest at? Well, some people were, they came back to us and said, well, I love talking with clients, but I just don't get enough time. And these people, all of a sudden, there's hours and hours and hours that get spent building relationships.
Yes.
And there's extra profitability that comes in that gets spent to, send a bottle of champagne at Christmas time. So there's, that's one client, I guess, more on the sort of direct to sort of B2B space, but I've got other clients that we've done this with, for example, in the medical space, where I've got a great client actually. I gotta be careful how much I describe him, but they're effectively an MSO. They do medical basically they provide providers to hospitals
Okay.
effectively, right?
Okay.
That's effectively their business model in a nutshell. But as a part of what they do, they also have all of these thousands and thousands of insurance claims that they themselves have to process for their providers. And so they had this team of 48 billers in this department, and I think they were spending something like 180 something. I think it was over 550 a quarter. So that I know that for a fact, and they were processing 1,000 claims a week.
Huh.
We did the exact same thing. We went in, we shadowed them for a bit, we identified what was going on, and we started to realize, I mean, they had this huge percentage of their claims that they would send out that had this, that would fail adjudication, that would need to be reworked and rebuilt and resent, and most of the time they wouldn't even win those, So there was this
Okay.
huge cash flow gap. So we went in there, we shadowed them for about 2 weeks. We built an algorithm, took us about 90 days to build it, but we replaced literally, all 48. I mean, now they've got one left who basically she sits on, I mean, I know her, she's great. She sits behind her desk and she's watching the algorithm do its thing, and she reports, but I mean, that's it, but so 47 people cut off off the payroll who now can work for, another company. So I think to your question, I think for some people it's about repurposing within the company. And then there are other cases where, just the world does move on and we don't need that role anymore. So that's where, I recommend companies go in and actually, provide, sort of a roadmap for their team to help them, find better positions elsewhere.
For sure. That's very good. To your point about the hotel in San Francisco too. I mean, we do this internally with our team, but with our clients that are really strong on brand and relationship and really building that brand in the age of AI and automation, all these types of things. I mean, harnessing those things, but trying to find those points of human touch where, as you said, you can be really creative and be impactful and do things that, because people are craving that human touch, or
Yeah.
like you said, going out and like building relationship in person with people instead of over Zoom, or, I mean, just
Yeah.
trying to create those systems that allow you then to have the time to be creative and really show that human touch and build your brand and really get your clients sticky with you and stand out in the sea of automation. And nobody picks up the telephone, I mean, all those types of things. I mean, that's powerful stuff, especially now. I mean, kind of going back to old school things that people used to do, but using what you're doing to create the space to do the old school things that really create human connection.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. How about just kind of running global operations for you? I mean, hundreds of people with technology driving speed. How do you preserve culture and trust across the organization, but across borders too?
Mm. So a big part of this I'll attribute to Adam, my co-founder at Superior, because I think he really is the guy that I've learned the most on from this. So I'll give him full credit where credit is due. Um, it's about creating a cult, I think, in the most positive way.
Mhm.
It's, I think if we look within our own teams, we have this, I mean, it's people either, for example, in Superior, they're either part of the cult of Superior or they're not. I mean, and we're constantly hiring, we're constantly interviewing, and the thing is, I'd say higher than a 96% rejection rate for people who are fully qualified to work with us, because there's that spark, there's that a little bit of crazy that we're looking for, that someone will, they'll work through the holidays, they'll work through Christmas, they'll work on New Year's Eve. They don't care. It's this passion for the big picture, and they've got to be bought into that. So I don't know if that's necessarily something that we cultivate as much as it is that we attract people, and we just really sort of gatekeep that to where the people who are let in are really at that forefront of the values of the organization. But I think another big thing is that you've got to make a space, and I think this is an easy thing to say, a hard thing to do, but I think you've got to make space as a founder. It doesn't matter. I honestly believe it doesn't matter how large the organization is. I think actually the bigger the organization is, the more of an impact that it makes. But I think you need to make the time to do one-on-ones. And I think that's such an underrated hack to just keeping the culture, keeping the fire going as a team, and going in and just having just these literal 10-minute, 5-minute meetings, where I'll just go in, there's a couple days a week where I'll just go in and it's 2-3 hours of just quick 5 minutes here and there. And we are just boom, hey, what's going on, dude? How's life? How's the wife? How's family? What's going on? And then pointing to business and saying, well, what are you working on? What's frustrating you? Giving people a place to feel heard, to feel seen. I think that's it's something that I think it happens naturally when you're very small, but I think as you scale and you grow and you grow and you grow, I think
Sure.
that's a harder thing to maintain.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, actually?
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. And it was easier in some ways back in the day when everybody was physically in an office and you could just literally walk around and pop your head in and talk to people. A little harder in the virtual world where you really got to be more intentional about it. But as you said, I mean, as you continue to grow, and I just think the companies that have the best culture, the strongest core values are where the CEO, from time to time travels around, whether it's around the country or around the offices around the world, and just spend some time in each of the offices, just
Yep.
physically being with the people. And again, whether it's just 5 minutes for a person or it's longer, just being seen and heard, meaning employees being seen and heard by their leader, it's so important. Even if nothing like substantive comes across, just having that connection.
Yeah.
Of course, substance enhances it, but just having that physical connection and to your leader is so important. And then
100%.
you're just not a number, and they care about you. They know you.
Yeah.
They know your name.
Yeah.
As you get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's so important. And most people leave their job. It's not really because of the company, or it's their direct manager or leader,
Mm,
like the person they're
mm,
directly working with and being led by. I mean, that's usually the number one reason people leave. It's not money. It's not all these other things. It's
mm,
what is that relationship like?
mm.
So very important. And you've mentioned apex capitalism. You've also said that capitalism is about service, not self-interest. So how do you design companies that live out that truth, both in
Mm.
product and in culture?
Well, I think it comes down to the value system. I think, profitability is obviously that's a prerequisite to staying in business.
Right.
But I also think that the building of value is also correlated. So I think if we take a step back on that, I think that those are not separate or conflicting points. I think that's the people who are anti-capitalism tend to separate both of those points completely, and there tends to be this idea that it's a zero-sum game.
Mm,
I think
right.
when you're trading in the markets, yeah, well, great. Enjoy the arbitrage. That's a very much a zero-sum game,
Hmm.
that for sure. But I think in terms of the free markets, I think because there's that alignment between all parties. I mean, I think it is fractal. I think the more you zoom into it, the more triangulation you can make,
Uh-huh.
actually. I think when you're looking at this from 30,000-foot view, you've got business, you've got market. If you zoom into your business, you've got your investors, you've got your leaders, you've got your manager. And as long as you can continue to build that win-win-win where everyone is winning, I think that is the ultimate perspective. I may not be answering your question directly there, but I think that's the position at the very least. That's the position that I sort of take with this, is that those objectives are absolutely there. It is necessary to have both of those in spades. You've got to have 10 out of 10 on profit. You've got to have 10 out of 10 on building value. I think the problem is that for a lot of, and I'm saying this not as someone who's not made this mistake myself, the problem that I've made, I'll phrase it that way, is seeing value as something that is positioning rather than intrinsic. Right. And I think that there is this idea that you can, as long as our branding is good enough, great. I mean, but both you and I know companies who are absolutely killing it. They don't have a LinkedIn page. They don't have, their website's this old HTML from 1993.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like they've got nothing, but they're absolutely killing it.
Yeah.
So I think positioning is interesting, but ultimately, and this is sort of the framework that I like to look at this through, is truth, results, respect. So truth is truth and data, truth and, what is the fact here, right? Does the market need this or no? Is it binary, or is it on maybe a bit of a spectrum? Do they kind of want it, but they don't need it? So maybe that's where positioning can come in and sort of help to, raise that buying temperature. But ultimately, what you're left with at the end of the day is this material piece of intrinsic value that if you can increase that level of value that the consumer, that the buyer takes home, at that point you're sitting on a gold mine, because you're able to, and frankly, if you're able to do that in a way that's scalable with lower acquisition, lower delivery, then sky's the limit. And I think that the more that question's asked, which is how do we add more value, and what is needed to make a transaction happen between whether it's B2B, B2C, as long, and I guess I can kind of pull us back to your earlier question about how do we inject this into the entire company, even at a global scale, is everyone within any company that I'm invested in or that I found, head to toe, we all know what causes a transaction to happen. And then we also know what causes that to be a repetitive transaction and what makes that transaction increase or decrease. So I think there's this understanding where it's almost you're decentralizing value creation.
Okay.
In a sense. I don't know if, and again, I'm probably talking, I'm kind of known for this, actually, just answering a question by doing all this.
That's great.
I don't know if that actually answers what you're looking for with that question or not.
Yeah. How about turning to your book a little bit? So your book, Unlimited Influence, explores ethical persuasion. So what do you think is the most misunderstood concept about influence in leadership today? And what do you mean by ethical persuasion?
It's a good question. So I think the one piece that is most misunderstood is that it takes a certain personality type, or it takes a certain persona to be amazing at sales. I think that would be, I think there's so many companies who have absolute sales assassins, maybe sitting behind an engineering desk because they've been told their whole life that, yeah, you're introverted, you're this, you're that. But actually, I think that would be the biggest myth that I can think of, is that you've got to be this, type A, super extroverted, because if you put the right person into something that aligns with what they value and with what they spend most of their time with already, that person will absolutely talk your ear off. I mean, both of you and I've met people where, it's this nerdy little guy and he's like, oh yeah, and I don't really do much. And then you start talking about what he's interested in and he will sell your boots off on anything.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's, I don't know if that's a controversial point, but because I think there's all these tests nowadays of, Myers-Briggs and all these different, personality, persona defining things. But I think you can actually break free from that as long as you are selling something that you actually are aligned with.
That's very good.
And then I think on the ethical side, look, that's an interesting question. With that book, I think I wrote that book in 2013. I wrote it actually in December of 2013. I wrote the whole book in a month. I was in Russia because I spent many years actually in Russia, so that's a different story for a different day. But I was
Yeah.
sitting at this one bar. This is back when I was a bit of a degenerate, and I would partake in alcohol and cigarettes, etc. Now I just what do I do? I do these nicotine pouches and a lot of espresso.
Those
That's all
the
I do today.
Zens? Are those Zens or no?
Yeah, it's a Swiss version of it, but yeah,
Okay.
same,
Okay.
same type
Yeah.
of idea. Yeah, product placement.
Those are, I mean, that whole category is absolutely exploding. It's unbelievable. From all walks of life, all ages. It's like, where did this come from?
Where did it come from? And it's not slowing down. I think
No.
it's rapid. So I was sitting there in I just exited out of a company, and I was there and I was like, I want to just take everything that I've learned about sales, and I basically wrote something that I would want to hand to my kids one day.
Okay.
And that was just the idea. So I just
Yeah.
started writing, and then after so I guess to speak to your question about the ethical part, and that's where I kind of wanted to bring this here, is I think that there's a lot in the space. I think we've all seen it with there's just tons of, I won't name any names, but just a lot of different influencers out there who are just, maybe pushing these different ideas and methodologies. And a lot of it is about scripting, and it's about read the script just this way,
Yeah.
and you'll be able to move heaven and earth. And I mean, look, if that belief really sits into their subconscious, maybe that will work. But I don't think for the vast majority of people, if they don't have their house in order, and if they're not aligned with what they're selling, I don't think it'll actually work, because we all have BS meters that go off
Right.
the minute somebody says something or
Yes.
does something. I mean, it happens all the time where you talk to somebody, there's no way what you're saying is true. Like
Right.
I never believe it. So I think for me, the ethical part is, do you stand behind it? And then in terms of your methodology, I actually think that the methodology is more about structure and identifying in the other person, is this a good fit? And I think that actually one of the metaphors that I've used in the past is that instead of being somebody who's on American Idol trying to dance on stage and trying to sell the damn thing, be Simon Cowell a little bit, and actually, before you start pitching, actually see, is there actually a need here?
Right. Yes.
Right? And kind of stepping back. So I think that's, to me, where the ethical part comes in. I think in terms of the methodologies, I mean, look, I think be as creative as you humanly can be. I mean, as long as you're not BSing, just, do whatever it takes. I mean, there was this one guy that I would literally send him out a bottle of wine every month with his name on it. I would send him a USB sticks back in the day. And, hey, I made a video for you. This is pre-Loom and all that kind of stuff. And finally the guy calls me up and goes, would you fucking stop this, man? What do I got to do to get you to stop? I said, listen, let me get into your office for 10 minutes. If you hate the idea, I'll never talk to you again. We go in there and we sign a contract. So but to me, it's, that actually is ethical, though, is that if you know that there is a good fit, then you will be creative enough,
Right.
and you will look at the big picture to identify whatever's needed to
Yeah.
close that sale.
No, that's very, very good. How about, you mentioned AI earlier? I mean, AI, automation, I mean, basically reshaping every industry. It's touching everything. What do you believe remains, we kind of touched on this a little bit too, remains uniquely human, and therefore like the next great advantage in this world of AI and automation? What's truly human, and where's the advantage there with humanity?
I would say, what is it that AI cannot do that only you can do? What is it that AI cannot say that only you can say? I think that's where the impact is going to come from. Is, look at your story, look at your you have a body. And look, I know that there's 1X and there's Optimus and all these things. All of these, great, it's amazing, whatever. But if a robot knocks on your door and says, "Oh, I'm a California farm," No, my 12 gauge is going to go right in that sucker's. I mean, that it's that quick. I mean, there's no, like, you're not believing that, right? So I think that's our advantage, and I think that's the thing that I feel is truncating the power that most people actually have, is that they're delegating, they're outsourcing their thinking to AI. So you get this weird process now where there's this laziness in thinking, where a lot of people will vomit their ideas into whatever AI will. What do I want to tell this person, right? And then they'll just hit enter and think back. Versus, I think it's actually good to have a couple of typos. You know, like I think it's actually great to kind of write things and maybe just be a little bit human. You know, I think it's not a bad idea. So I think that's, you know, the humanity, wherever you can say that AI cannot do this, I would say that's where we need to lean into. And frankly, that's where, going back to, you know, full circle, I think that's where this repurposing of human resource should really be going to. You know, can somebody make a video and send it out to you? Can somebody go knock on someone's door? I mean, that's great. Do it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when everybody else is afraid to do it.
Right.
Even better. I mean, it's like that one scene with Will Ferrell where he goes, "Oh God, what idiots! More for you and me." That's great. Like whenever I, you know, like, so when I see people who are just, you know, just automate every single thing, give it to AI, every single thing to AI, it's like, great. Yeah, I mean, it's more for you and me, dude. I mean, that's great. I'm happy with that.
No,
because I'm not going to stop. You know.
Yeah. How about leadership? How has your personal definition of leadership evolved over time?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think before, I used to think leadership was about being the loudest voice in the room. And I think now it's evolved to, it's the person who can listen the most and actually understand the vision. I think that's the way that my perspective has shifted quite a bit. I think if you were to see me with my earlier, you know, my earlier days on my team meetings and, you know, sort of boiler room pump ups, it's really, you know, it's all about, you know, being rah rah. I think now it's much more, I want to listen and I want to understand and I want to really, you know, seek that clarity first. And if I end up talking at all during a meeting, I'm happy for that to be sort of the grace notes, not the main symphony.
Yeah. Any other particular leadership lessons that you've learned that have been particularly valuable?
I mean, you've got to go there first, I think, is a big thing, is if you, you know, if you ask something of your team, actually understand what your team is doing, like spend time in, you know, in the trenches with your team and actually understand what their process is and what they're doing. Because I think there's a lot of this disconnected leadership where it's just, yeah, let's go, you know, go do this. And it's very, weirdly enough, it's very sort of pre-capitalism, you know, where you just have this, you know, there was a great quote. I'll find out who said this and I'll send it to you, but it was something along the lines of, before capitalism, if you wanted significant wealth, it was only available or accessible through robbery, conquest, and slavery, or something like that, right? And it's kind of, I think the beauty of capitalism is that, you know, you can actually just get in there with the boys and find out, and the girls, and find out what's going on, you know, and you know, so actually, like, get on the production line, you know, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked even before we started recording just about your love of capitalism. Maybe talk a little about ways just capitalism, the free market system, has benefited you and your business model and what you've done over time.
That's a great question. I mean, I think, look, you know, I'm not, I think it comes down to the fact that Milton Friedman said this, I think. I'll attribute it to him, and maybe it's incorrect. But he said something to the effect of, the only instance where you can escape extreme levels of poverty is through capitalism. And so for me, that's and I'll do a quick caveat, I'll go right back to that. But I think for me, my top three values in my life as a man, you could wake me up at 1 a.m. and I could tell this to you in order. It is to provide for my family, to protect, and to be present with my family.
Very good.
And so when I think about the first two in that, actually all three of those, it is connected in a sense. And I'm not saying that if you're in extreme poverty, you can't be present with or et cetera, but I think that, it's a much more difficult life to live when you're paycheck to paycheck, or you've got more, what do they say, more month at the end of your money. I think Tony Robbins said that.
Huh.
It's so I think for me, capitalism, the reason why I'm so in love with that is that you have this idea that you can just do things. You can be a sovereign person and just get out there and self-determine what it is that you want to create in the world. And the market will actually determine if it's going to work or not. But it's up to you to be resilient and get back out there and continuously improve yourself and improve the offers and improve where you're seeking, the answers from. I mean, all of this it's just a greatly empowering system. So for me, when I think about that, and I love that because it's the most empowering model that I can find.
Yes. How about what's like investment strategies? What strategies have proven most effective for you in identifying and capitalizing on high growth opportunities?
I think it comes down to, depending on the instrument or the opportunity. I think if we're talking about companies, then I think it comes down to the founder and why are they doing it. If they want to retire their parents, or they've got family or whatever, if there's a deeper motivating factor behind them that's going to keep them going after they get Mike Tyson right on the jawbone.
Yeah.
That is a big point, because I think there have been companies that I've invested in where I've ignored that and I just only looked at the business model. And I think you are investing in the founder as much as you're investing in the idea.
Yeah.
And so I think there have been many times where at least three times in the last 24 months that I've made that mistake, where I've gone in and I go, oh, great, the guy doesn't really want to do this, but man, this is a damn good idea, dude. This would be awesome.
Uh-huh.
And then they hit their first bump in the road, and then, everybody's, excuse making and all that. So I think
Sure.
that it's maybe a bit of that. I don't know if that aligns well with your perspective.
Sure. Yeah. And I've asked this question to a lot of people, and I mean, it's as you said, there's some correlation, but it comes close to 50% the leader or the leadership team, 50% the business. But you need leaders because so many, especially in the startup world, the business starts one way, but it ends up being something totally different. But if you just have people that can figure it out, they can iterate and just keep going and don't stop. I mean, if you don't have that, or as you said, just that motive, what is the driver and the motivation behind it, so that when they do hit obstacles or Mike Tyson type punches in the face, because every single person is going to get those and multiple times. How are you going to be resilient? How are you going to figure out the next step and just keep pushing forward no matter what? So I think it's pretty in line with what I believe and what I've heard from so many people. How about we talked about A players and B players and C. For you, maybe discuss your approach to attracting and retaining high performance people in your businesses. How do you find them? How do you get them to come? And how do you keep them?
How do we find them? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think for us, it's, I think with every company that I'm involved in does it a little bit different, but I think the most interesting example might be with Superior. I think with Superior, we're looking for, it's, to use a very nerdy reference, it's almost like we're building the Avengers.
Okay.
So there's this idea that and at this point it's a large group of, it's pretty big, the roster is kind of full, but the idea really is that if I see someone who produces something amazing, whether it's on Twitter or on LinkedIn or on, even on the App Store or wherever else, I'll literally go in there and I'll make the introduction, I'll say, hey, amazing work you did on that. Love to talk to you sometime. And, whether it's an engineer, I mean, I love to kind of go in and find people who are already in that stream versus try to create, try to build my own, super soldier. I like to find the
Sure.
guys who are out there kind of, they're already, they've already done 3 tours of, whatever, so
Yeah.
they're, "Oh, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, let's come on in." So I guess I see a little bit of that almost like a private military contractor might, in the sense of some of our guys and gals, I mean, they're incredibly talented, and they're in their, when they started working with us, they were in their early 60s.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I mean, like
That's
I don't like
incredible.
I will find people like I mean, people talk about DEI, dude. Like all like I will. The only thing I really give a shit about is, are you in this to win this with us?
Yes.
And if you are, like, let's fucking go. Like that. That's,
Amazing.
so.
Yes.
So I mean, there's a little bit of that, where we like to go in and, pull people out who are doing incredible things, and, maybe not at the level or at the degree of insanity as Meta is doing with their, giving $100 million,
Right.
$100 billion. It's insane what these
Right.
guys are doing.
Yes.
I mean, we're not doing that. So whoever's listening, don't get any ideas. I'm not going to do that. But there is this idea of, I like to find people who are already in that, and I like to pull them out of what they're doing, treat them better, and then, give them a place where they can really feel connected. I think that's how we attract, is actually part of our interview processes is actually bringing other team members in. So we don't just have one singular person who goes in and does the interviews. We have this process where people get to meet and greet, and there's this, back and forth and conversation, because I know that, I've got such a high degree of trust with everybody on my team that if somebody sees something that maybe the person who did the original interview didn't see, they'll bring it up. And vice versa, maybe they'll see strengths that we didn't see originally as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it. And then I guess retaining, I think that, I mean, that just goes back to your culture question, really,
Right.
isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
that's about, are we psyched? I mean, like literally, if I were to open up some of my chats over here, I mean, you'd see chats at 3 in the morning,
Uh-huh.
you know, U.S. time zone, where they're like, "Dude, let's fucking go. Good morning." And like just gifts of like the Terminator. You're like, "Dude, this is insane." Like this, and it just keeps on going.
Yes.
Like those Twitch chats. It's like, this is insane. So, that's a big, a big strategy, I think, that, it's just really finding people in the weirdest of places, and whether it's at a convention or something, and
Uh-huh.
you just go, "Hey, like, what are they paying you?" Like,
Right.
well, what would it take to get you on board? I mean, so that's been a bit of, how we do it at Superior. Then, at some of at the other companies that I'm involved in, it's, sometimes it's a lot more, okay, great. We've got somebody who just, well, that's their whole job, is to go
Uh-huh.
and recruit, et cetera.
Yeah.
Or, they outsource or whatever, there's just different strokes.
No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we found with a lot of leaders, but especially like software engineers and others, and I mean, Elon and Zuck, and these people have all said this, like a true absolute rock star, superstar software engineer isn't like 2 times or 10x better, than hiring a bunch. I mean, it's 100 or 1,000x better with that one person. And if you pay whatever it takes to get them, I mean, just
Yeah.
the output and the results you get, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's a bargain because
I
that's
mean,
such a huge advantage.
if I can turn the mic to you for a second, how do you help a founder rationalize that? Because I think a lot of founders, they go, yeah, like, of course I need an A player, but how do you get a founder to actually get that into their head, to actually see the ROI of that?
Uh-huh. That's a great question. I mean, it's very true that A players hire A players and B players hire C players. I mean, that's very, very, very true across all industries all
Mhm.
around the world. So usually they're already wired that way in some ways and have that mindset, but it's just having a conversation and being realistic too. And usually when we ultimately present a slate of candidates, and we've really talked about it all the way through the process, so they know this is coming. If it is coming, we might have one where, whatever the comp range is, there's someone that's way out of it, but they are, and we've again, like 3 weeks into a search is when we present our slate, but 2 weeks in we do like a search update with our client, and at that point we'll say, hey, we came across, Sam Smith here. We know this is kind of where we're thinking comp wise, but he's so good, so incredible, but hey, he's, whatever X higher comp wise. Do you want us to present him at the end or even consider that? Or is that just totally out of bounds and you just don't even want to look at someone like that? And if they don't want to, that's fine. But if they do, we'll take them through the process and ultimately at the end present that person to so they can at least talk to them and know about them and then just make an educated decision. Yes, this person is that much better. We're willing to pay comp to get that person, or no, we have really strong people. We don't need to do that. So it's just a matter of being open and transparent, but they already have that mindset usually that, yeah, if you find someone like that, we want to at least know about them and then we can make the decision in an educated way, whether we want to do that or not, but at least let us know about it. So that's usually how it plays out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that because I mean, you're really on the money with that, I think, as well, because that's where your greatest output as a company, I think. It also it's so easy to just say, well, this is a slot that we're fitting. This is a seat in the company that, around the table that needs to be filled. Sure. But if you think about we're like in the rest of our lives with, personal and business, you actually put a premium on things that are actually better.
Right.
And
right.
you're actually willing to pay for better things. I mean,
Yes.
that's the idea, right? And so I think, I guess the reason that I was asking that is I can imagine that you've got, a lot there. And I think the point for me that's always been interesting is it's, especially when you're coming in as an investor, and then you see that pattern where it's, let's hire what we can. And it's the scarce mindset of just
Right.
trying to, it's like you're never going to break out of that ceiling if you don't get your A players in. I mean, think about, the Lakers or anybody else or any other sports team. If they just, went and skimped on that, you need those power players,
Right.
especially today.
Right. I mean, Nike would not be Nike if they hadn't done Michael Jordan. I mean, and that was way out of bounds of what they were even on their greatest imagination. I mean, and that's an extreme example, obviously, but
Well,
it's real.
it's an example for a reason. I mean,
Right.
the principle stands.
Yeah. How about for you, just what future trends, opportunities are you most excited about? And then maybe how you're positioning yourself to capitalize or benefit from those.
I mean, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think it comes back to this old school way of doing business.
Hmm.
I honestly believe that is where the world is going. I think that we've kind of, most of us have had it up to here with all of this, and virtual is great, but get knees to knees, toes to toes,
Yeah.
talk to people, like you get this interesting idea that, you start to see now where there's all these movements out there about, how do you retain your clients and how to client retention. And it's like, dude, people don't churn from people that they really know. Like it's easy to churn from pixels. It's like,
Right.
it's hard to churn from like a person, so I think there's, and even from a sales and from a marketing perspective, like, look, I'm not anti using cold email and cold calling. That's amazing. Like do it, but also get in front of a prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Like let them see the fire in your eyes. And also there's this idea that if you invest more, so I think that's a big part of this, is that if you can invest more in, people will actually appreciate more the fact that you've invested enough to be there physically or
Yeah.
to do something tangible, and I think in the digital space and age that we're in, that's the biggest trend that I can see moving forward is we're gonna hit a 180 on that. And I think most companies, whether they're chasing down RFPs, like, dude, if you get an RFP from, a large governing body, what are you going to do? Like, yeah, sure, fill it out and send it out. Great. Step, level 2 is add them on LinkedIn. Okay, great. That's awesome. Call them, email them. That's also great. But what if you do War Dog style and you just literally show up at their office?
Uh-huh. Right.
Like, what's wrong with that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like those like old school works. Like it's called old school for a reason because it actually works.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah. No, that's very, very good. How about last question? Success. For you personally, what's your definition of success? And you can take that any direction you want.
I'll have to go with Earl Nightingale's definition because I think that is my favorite definition to date.
Uh-huh.
And you're smiling because I'm sure you've probably heard that audio as many times as I have. It's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal.
Yes.
And I think that whether someone wants to be paraphrasing him, but if someone wants to be a clerk at a store, or they want to be a housewife, or they want to be a trillionaire, they want to be the first person on Mars, as long as you're taking steps every single day in that direction, and you're making that your target, and you're working towards it, and you're progressing towards it, that is success.
That's fantastic. Well, Jonathan, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and you've added tons of value and incredible insights. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, my friend.
No,
Pleasure.
absolutely. Yeah. So Jonathan De Collibus, we'll have all his contact information, everything about Superior socials and all that kind of stuff in the show notes. But again, I just really want to thank you. This has been fascinating, and thanks for connecting all the way from Switzerland. So really appreciate that. That's a first for capitalist culture, going live from Switzerland.
I love it. It's a blast, man. Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.